Welcome to Episode 12, the start of Part 4 of our series on standards and regulations. Up to now, we have studied attacks and engineering. Today, we answer a different question. Who actually sets the rules? And what does a company have to do to be allowed to sell a vehicle at all? This is the compliance landscape. For anyone working at a supplier, it is not optional reading. Let's start with what is at stake. For decades, automotive cybersecurity was a recommendation. That era is over. In key markets today, a vehicle that cannot prove its cybersecurity simply cannot be sold. To navigate this, you need 3 words clear in your mind. Regulations are legally binding. Miss them and you lose type approval, your permission to sell. Standards are best practice. They show you how to meet those regulations. And because no car maker builds a vehicle alone, the requirements cascade down the supply chain, pulling in every supplier. Those 3 ideas organize this entire episode. This first distinction trips up many newcomers, so let's nail it down. A regulation is issued by a government or by the United Nations body for vehicle rules. It is legally binding. It tells you what must be achieved. And it is enforced through type approval. Without it, you cannot sell. A standard is issued by a body like ISO, SAE, or the German Automotive Association. It is voluntary. It tells you how to do the work well. And crucially, it is used as evidence that you met the regulation. So the regulation is the law. The standard is the recognized way to satisfy it. Keep that pairing in mind because every item we discuss is either one or the other. Here is our map for the next 10 minutes. We will cover 5 things. Nasser's handbook splits the world into primary standards, which are compliance critical, and supporting standards, which address specific technical areas. In our list, the United Nations regulations and the Chinese GB framework are binding regulations. ISO 21434 and the older SAE J3061 are engineering standards. And TISAX sits a little apart because it governs information security across the supply chain rather than the security of the vehicle itself. We will take them in roughly that order and finish by showing how they all connect. We begin with the regulation that changed everything, United Nations Regulation 155. It was the first binding cybersecurity rule in the automotive world, issued by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Its core demand is this: a vehicle manufacturer must operate a cybersecurity management system, a framework of processes, roles, and responsibilities. Note the details. It is addressed to the vehicle makers, the OEMs. It covers not just passenger cars, but buses, trucks, and even trailers, if they contain an electronic control unit. It applied to new vehicle types from 2022 and to all new vehicles from July 2024. And the consequence is blunt. Without approval under R155, the vehicle cannot be sold in member markets. R155 is enforced through a 2-step approach, and understanding it explains why your OEM customer puts pressure on you. Step 1 is at the company level. An approval authority audits the manufacturer's cybersecurity management system. If the processes are sound, the company receives a certificate of compliance, valid for about 3 years. Step 2 is at the product level. Armed with that certificate, the manufacturer applies for type approval for each individual vehicle type. The authority checks that cybersecurity risks were actually mitigated for that type. Here is the key point for a supplier. The OEM is responsible for collecting all the evidence. So the OEM cascades the requirements down to you. That means suppliers must deliver their cybersecurity work products on time, or the OEM's approval is at risk. R155 has a twin United Nations Regulation 156 on software updates. Modern vehicles change after they leave the factory through over-the-air updates. That creates new risk, so R156 makes a software update management system mandatory, mirroring the structure of R155. 4 ideas to remember. The SUMS is the managed process that ensures updates are safe and secure. The RxSWIN is a unique software identifier tied to the vehicle's type approval, so authorities can track exactly which software is approved. Updates must be protected against tampering, and if one fails, rolling back must be safe and attacker must not be able to force a downgrade to vulnerable software. And the user must be informed before an update is installed. The standard ISO 24089 is the recognized way to satisfy R156, just as 21434 serves R155. Now, the standard at the heart of this whole field, ISO and SAE 21434, published in 2021. Unlike a regulation, it does not force anyone to do anything by law. Instead, it is the recognized state-of-the-art reference for how to engineer cybersecurity across the entire vehicle lifecycle. It was a genuinely international effort, 82 organizations from 12 countries, including carmakers, suppliers, and academics. That is why it carries global authority. It covers the whole life cycle, from concept through development and production to decommissioning. And unlike the regulation, it applies to everyone in the value chain, not just the OEM. Most importantly for compliance, it is the bridge. Following 21434 is the accepted way to demonstrate that you have met the requirements of UN R155. Let's glance inside the standard so it is not just a number. It is one document of 15 clauses. The early clauses are general scope, terms, definitions. Then it falls into 3 blocks. Clauses 5 through 8 are management organizing cybersecurity, managing it per project, working with suppliers, and monitoring continuously. Clauses 9 through 14 follow the lifecycle concept, product development, validation, production, operations, and end of support. And Clause 15 is the famous one, TERA, the threat analysis and risk assessment methods we used in earlier episodes. One helpful detail. Every clause follows the same rhythm objectives, then inputs, then requirements, then work products. Those work products are the concrete documents you must produce. And they are exactly what the OEM collects as evidence for R155 approval. Let's make the relationship explicit, because it is the single most useful idea in this episode. The regulation and the standard are partners, not rivals. R155 says what must be achieved have a management system, manage cyber risk, and mitigate it for each vehicle type. But R155 is short and deliberately generic. It defines no work products and no step-by-step method. ISO 21434 says how. It provides the processes and, critically, the work products that demonstrate you did the work. So the standard fills the regulation's gap and becomes the practical playbook. When a supplier follows 21434 properly, they are simultaneously generating the evidence their OEM needs for approval. What and how working together? To understand 21434, it helps to know what came before it, SAE J3061, published in 2016. It was the first real automotive cybersecurity guidebook. It was deliberately modeled on the functional safety standard ISO 26262, so that safety and security would feel familiar to the same engineers. It gave the industry its first cybersecurity process. It tied security to safety, and it promoted principles we still use, like defense in depth and least privilege. But it had real limits. It was essentially a United States initiative, so it lacked international breadth. It was mostly high-level prose with very few concrete requirements, and it did not harmonize the existing standards. Those weaknesses are exactly why ISO and SAE joined forces. The first edition of 21434 formally canceled and replaced J3061. It is still cited today as useful background, but it is no longer the reference you build to. If your products go to China, and for most suppliers, they do face China's own framework. And the first thing to learn is the prefix. A standard beginning with GB is mandatory. One beginning with GB/T is recommended, though it can become mandatory if nationally adopted. The headline mandatory standard is GB 44495, dated 2024. Technical Requirements for Vehicle Cybersecurity. It becomes effective in January 2026. It is aligned with UN R155, especially on the management system side, but it places a stronger emphasis on concrete technical requirements. Around it sits a family of recommended GB/T standards, covering guidance for automotive electronics, general vehicle requirements, and specific test methods for interactive systems, gateways, and electric vehicle platforms. One practical note. China also standardizes its own cryptographic algorithms, SM2, SM3, and SM9, and suppliers selling there are expected to support them. TISAX, the Trusted Information Security Assessment Exchange, was created by the German Automotive Association and is operated by the ENX organization. It is built on the information security standard ISO 27001. Its purpose is to certify that a company can safely handle the sensitive data shared with it, designs, prototypes, intellectual property. The process is straightforward. A company registers, performs a self-assessment using the ISA questionnaire, undergoes an external audit, and then shares the result through an exchange. Each control is scored on a maturity scale from 0 to 5. The clever part is the exchange model. You are assessed once, and the result is accepted by all participating partners. Assess once, share many times. In practice, an OEM can demand a valid TISAX label before it will share confidential data with a supplier. Let's prevent a common confusion because engineers mix these two up constantly. ISO 21434 protects the product. It asks, is the vehicle itself secure against attack? It is about engineering the car. TISAX protects the information. It asks, can this company be trusted to handle the confidential data we share with it? It is about how the organization runs its information security. A supplier typically needs both 21434 to prove the part is secure and a TISAX label to prove the company can be trusted with the OEM's data. They are complementary, not alternatives. And confusing them in a customer meeting is an easy way to look unprepared. Let's assemble the whole picture from a supplier's point of view in 3 layers. At the top is the law UN R155 and R156, and in China GB 44495. You cannot sell without satisfying these. In the middle is the how ISO 21434 and its software update companion ISO 24089 are the recognized way to meet that law with J3061 as the origin story behind them. At the base is organizational trust. TISAX protects the confidential data that flows between you and your partners. The bottom line for a supplier is simple. Your OEM customer needs type approval. The OEM cannot get it without evidence. So the OEM requires you to deliver proper 21434 work products and to hold a TISAX label. Compliance is not a side task. It is the price of doing business. Let's recap with 4 lines. 1. Keep regulation and standards separate in your mind. One is the binding law, the other is the recognized way to meet it. 2. R155 says what? 21434 says how. Following the standard generates the evidence the regulation demands. 3. Markets have their own local rules. China's GB framework is mandatory and runs on its own timeline, so global suppliers must track it. 4. TISAX is about data, not the car. Product security and information security are different jobs, and you usually need both. Master these 4, and the whole compliance landscape stops feeling like alphabet soup. Let's close on the core message. Standards and regulations can feel like bureaucracy, but for a car maker, they are nothing less than the license to sell. Get them wrong, and the vehicle never reaches the road. In the next episode, we move from knowing the rules to applying them by building a cybersecurity management system in practice. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in episode 13.